Hello, Rochester. Welcome to today's presentation of Rochester Community Power. If you're new to Zoom, you might want to use the speaker view to see the program at full screen. Please know your microphone and camera will be off, but if you want to ask a question, it's actually the Q&A feature, not the chat feature. So if you're in full screen, hover your cursor, usually over the bottom, but maybe sometimes the top of the screen, and you'll see that little like bubble icon for words and Q&A. So if you click on that, you should be able to type in your questions. We will address some of them live. Others, our team here at Rocktricity will be typing responses to, and I'll answer the live ones at the end of the presentation. So my name is Hughes Smith, and I'm one of the partners here at Rocktricity, joined by Ben Freevert, Margie Pete, and Melissa Carlson, and our two additional members, Shannon Bellamy and Sienna Prieto. And our organization is a subcontractor to Joule Community Power. Joule is the approved New York State administrator for community choice aggregation programs and is the entity that won a competitive process to be the administrator for the Rochester program. So the city of Rochester is bringing clean energy choices to the community. This is the result of several years of development. The city of Rochester passed a climate action plan in May of 2017. You can access that plan through the city's website. And if you choose to read it, you will discover that community choice aggregation is just one idea that the city has been exploring to help the city meet its climate goals. And those of us at Rocktricity certainly appreciate and value that the city of Rochester is being a leader in climate action, not just in the state, but in the country. And Rochester Community Power is reflects the largest New York City's effort to use community choice aggregation as a tool to meet clean energy goals. So what is the program and when does it launch? The program officially launches in September. So you've all received a letter. We're pleased that folks are reading the letter, reaching out with questions. That's certainly the idea of the letter. And if folks take an action and tell us they don't want to participate, now is the ideal time to do that, but people can always leave the program. You can always join back into the program as well. And this is the opportunity for City of Rochester residents and small businesses to access the purchasing of 100% New York State generated and therefore consumed renewable electricity supply. And in September, participants will begin to be enrolled into the program. Okay, so you have received a letter. We describe it as an opt-out letter. You know you are eligible for this program. If you have received this letter, it'll have the seal of the city of Rochester on it. It's signed by Mayor Warren. And again, we thank Mayor Warren, the other city council members, and the Rochester city staff for their leadership in bringing community choice aggregation to our community. So in this letter, there are details explaining the program. I'm going to review those details now. And the contact information for our team here at Rocktricity is also in the letter, as well as a card that is really helpful if you decide you don't want to participate. And you'll want to hang on to that card, or at least to give us some information or then to put in the mail. So more on that in a second. So today I'm going to review what community choice aggregation is, the benefits of CCA, the specific contract and price details, address the question of whether it will affect you, we'll take a quick look at an RG&E bill and think about how the bill will change in appearance once you become a participant. And then next steps. And I do want to be sure, I'm telling my team here at Rocktricity, I want to be sure to remind folks of RG&E's role in communicating these next steps. So if I forget, chime in and remind me or share. So community choice aggregation is a program for energy purchasing. It has been authorized by the New York State Public Service Commission in April of 2016. This type of program, community choice aggregation, is available in other states. I believe New York State was about the 7th one to adopt it. And do be aware that rules differ state by state. So New York State looked at what was happening in other states. They ran a pilot program in Westchester County. They took that learning, created the rules and regulations for our program, and authorized it in April of 2016. So what does it do? It allows municipalities to aggregate the energy demand and therefore negotiate a bulk purchase or a bulk purchase price, right? Remember, if you wanted to buy in bulk, that generally means you get a better price per unit. And that's the idea behind CCA. So you have to have a bulk of participants in order to go out to bid, to negotiate and get that good price. And for that reason, New York State's Public Service Commission has structured CCA as an opt-out program. And that means that everyone is in who's eligible unless they take an action to leave. And when there's a competitive bid, the energy companies, they look at the data. They look at what participation typically is across the state. They have that 60 to 80% in mind, and they make their best offer. And that's how we are assured that this is the best price that we could get for this product at the time of the energy bid. And what this does is it simply shifts the selection of the default supplier, or what the automatic offering is, if you will. And it's shifting it from the state, New York State, telling the utility, in this case RG&E, to go ahead and purchase electricity on behalf of your community, to your local municipality directing where that purchase is going to come from. This might be a good moment to just remind folks that we're really thinking about electricity in two ways. You have dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of generators of electricity that are putting electrons into the grid. Those electrons are flowing through the wires all the time. And then those generators have to be compensated. And that compensation, right, is where we're directing our dollars. So more on that, happy to take questions on that later. So all eligible energy customers may participate. Most residents and small businesses will be automatically included, have to take an action to leave. Very large energy users, say like a hospital or the University of Rochester, they could participate if they wanted to, but it's probably not advantageous to them. They already can command the market because they consume a lot of energy. So community choice aggregation really provides the same kind of opportunities to residents and small businesses that large entities already have access to. So the benefits of community choice aggregation, as I mentioned, leveraging that bulk buying strategy through aggregation to get the best possible price for the product that you are seeking. In this case, the product is 100% New York State generated renewable electricity purchasing, and it's a fixed rate. And we believe that a fixed rate is helpful to people because it reduces one piece of the volatility of our utility bills. Of course, our utility bills are a function of a variety of things: use, of electricity, and for many people also for natural gas or oil, however you're heating, and the price of those products. So this is just one piece, but we think that it's an advantage to have that price be stable. So Rochester Community Power is offering you the opportunity to purchase electricity for 5.8 cents per kilowatt hour for the next 2 years. We think it's an advantage that CCA enables the local selection of the automatic product. And that is because it empowers communities to meet other goals. In this case, the City of Rochester's climate goals. And it can help accelerate the transition to renewable energy. Community choice aggregation is a tool, and it's a tool that can be used in a variety of ways. Aggregating the supply price is just the first piece that the City of Rochester hopes to explore. Okay, so again, you are being offered a set price per kilowatt hour of electricity, and that's different than what you experience if RG&E is purchasing on your behalf. And that's because the rules for RG&E require them to pass through the costs each month. So each month, RG&E's price is going up and down, typically between the 4 and 6.5 cent range. So this price at 5.8 cents per kilowatt hour is very competitive with what RG&E typically passes through to us, and yet is for 100% renewable electricity supporting those generators, whereas the disclosure statement that came in the mail within the last couple of months from RG&E indicates that their purchasing is supporting, 54% of it is supporting fossil fuel power plants, primarily gas and what are called dual fuel facilities. So, many thanks and kudos to the City of Rochester for their leadership in increasing the demand for renewable electricity. So the contract, the winning supplier, and again, Joule Community Power puts together a competitive bidding process. There were a number of energy companies that responded. The winning supplier, the one with the best price available, was Constellation Energy. The contract is available for the next 24 months, and it's for the 100% New York State renewable price of 5.8 cents per kilowatt hour if you're a resident, so shown here in dollars, or slightly higher, 5.877 for small commercial operations. Okay, so will CCA affect me? Generally, customers are enrolled on an opt-out basis. So if you've received a letter and a subsequent phone call from RG&E, you are eligible for this program. If you have not received a letter, and therefore also not a phone call from RG&E, it's probably for one of 4 reasons. Okay, you may already be in an ESCO contract. If you've made a choice, we can't override that choice. If you happen to be a large business, for example, have a demand meter, you're not automatically included. Some customers have previously put a freeze or a block on your account, so that is respected. And the 4th reason is if you are a Home Energy Assistance Program recipient. Okay, so HEAP participants, due to the rules of the Public Service Commission, are excluded from this CCA product. But I know the City of Rochester in particular wants to see the development of community solar projects and use the CCA tool to help facilitate the HEAP participants in particular being able to access the savings through community solar. So that's something to come down the road, more on that as that opportunity develops, okay? So for CCA, customers are going to be automatically enrolled unless you take an action to leave either before the program begins, okay? You can always leave at any time with no penalty, okay? But beginning September 1st, at whatever date your meter is read, whether it's read on the 1st or the 15th or the 29th, on that day, you get switched into the CCA program, which means the bill you see in October will reflect the new pricing. Which brings us to our RG&E bill. I know a lot of us don't spend a lot of time looking at our RG&E bill. We just figure, yeah, we look at the total, we got to pay the bill. So it's worth just taking a moment to think about what the different components of this bill really mean. Okay, so if you get your next bill and take a look at page 3 in particular, you'll see a special number here called your PODID that's associated with your meter. And should you need to contact us and you no longer have your opt-out letter, this is a really helpful number to have. So just a tip, okay? Now looking at your bill, whoops, sorry about that. Looking at your bill, you'll see in this example, you have RG&E's charges, the electricity delivery charges, right? RG&E is our utility. They are the delivery utility. They take care of our lines. They do our meter reads and our billing. They take care of outages. And the charges that are found in the delivery portion of your bill cover all of that work that RG&E does on our behalf. Okay, RG&E's bottom line is not impacted by CCA, and RG&E will still do the work that they do for you today, and their costs are covered through their delivery charges. The only time these rates change is every 3 years, RG&E can ask the Public Service Commission for changes to these rates, and that's called a rate case, okay? So these charges are set for the next 3 years, at least. Below that are the electricity supply charges. That's what CCA is influencing, okay? Now, there are a couple important differences. You'll see here when RG&E is purchasing for us, there's a variable supply charge. And as I mentioned before, it does vary between 4 and 6.5 cents, right? So in June, the average price was 6.3 cents. In May, I think it was like 5.5 cents. In April, it was 4.3 cents. So there is some variation month to month in that supply charge. And if you want to compare it to the CCA rate, you also have to add in these merchant function charge. The CCA rate is an all-in rate, and it's just one fixed 5.8 cents. Okay, and it will account for both the supply and the merchant function charge. So that's how it looks before you start. When the CCA program begins, so beginning in October, what you'll see happen is the supply charge, as I said, is just going to be one line. And this portion will be moved to the end of your RG&E bill. It's usually at page 6, and it will have a Constellation New Energy named as the supplier and Constellation's contact information, then the one line of the amount of energy use and the 5.8 cents per kilowatt hour, probably listed as 0.058, okay, and the cost. All right, well, hopefully that makes sense. If not, watch it again on YouTube, give us a call, happy to explain that in more detail. Okay, so you're looking at the cost, you're thinking that you do or don't want to be bothered for whatever reason to participate. So how do you leave the program? You need to take an action to opt out. It's really super easy. There is a card inside that letter and a prepaid envelope. Just put that in the envelope, stick it in the mail, preferably this week so that it's received before the end of the month. It'll get processed, your name gets removed, and you will never enter into this program unless you call us and decide you want to join, okay? You can also call myself and my team at 244-0244. And that's the Rochester Community Power Program hotline. Or you can go to the website, rochestercommunitypower.com, and about halfway down the page, you can click the Change My Enrollment button, and that'll bring you up to a screen where it asks for your pre-enrollment ID number. And if you call us, that's a super helpful number to have. And where you find that is on the opt-out card. So in the upper right-hand corner, you'll see the pre-enrollment ID number, usually begins with a 3. And that number just allows us to pull up the account more quickly and ensure that we have you properly removed, okay? So 3 easy ways if you don't want to be entered into the program to opt out. So next steps. Well, you received a welcome/opt-out letter, and if you were an eligible customer, right around the July 4th weekend, you can opt out at any time, but if you opt out before July 30th, then you won't ever be entered into the program, okay? So processing information takes a couple of weeks. If they begin in August entering the information into the system, then you will at least be in the program for a month or two. That's just how it works, okay? So you will know if you are in the program because you will get a subsequent letter from RG&E telling you that you now have Constellation New Energy as a supplier. That letter, I believe, will also have our phone number, so you can call us if you have questions at that time. And that letter will also be followed by another robocall from RG&E. Many people received one shortly after the opt-out letter came. Another robocall will be triggered after they send you what they describe as their switch letter. Okay, so we're making an effort. RG&E is partnering with us to inform customers. RG&E, as I said, is kind of agnostic to where the money to pay for the electrons goes. So they're happy to be of assistance, and they are being a really helpful partner. Okay, so the product is 100% New York State renewable energy as the default, and that new rate will beginning at your meter read that occurs on or after September 1st. And so your October bill, you will see Constellation New Energy, Inc., listed as your supplier. Okay, so time for your questions if you have any.
So yes, Sue, here's one. I was just beginning to type an answer, but this might be a good one for you to answer with the entire group. I am in a solar farm through SunCommon. I pay them directly. What are my options?
Fantastic question. So community solar works perfectly with this program. They're not at odds with one another. So you can continue participating with SunCommon and support Rochester Community Power through your default supply price.
You know, there's kind of another question here also that's somewhat related to that participation in community solar, and it is that if I'm participating in community solar and in CCA at the same time, how is it that I'm getting supply from both my community solar participation and the CCA supply contract?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's a great question and really speaks to this kind of accounting problem, if you will, right? So we have all these generators of electricity, the renewable ones in New York. There's many hydro facilities all across the state. There's obviously an increasing number of community solar farms. There's a handful of wind farms. There's fossil generation. There's nuclear generation. All of those generators are putting electrons into the grid. Any electron that comes in our house, we have no idea where it started. Odds are good it started at the nearest generator to you. So like in my case, the solar panels on my roof when it's sunny. When it's nighttime, it's probably coming from Gannett, from the nuclear power plant. But there's no way to know for sure where that electron started. Okay, so all these generators are putting electrons into the grid. What we're trying to do with our dollars is direct our support through our purchasing, right? So which generators do we want to encourage to stay in existence and increase in presence? And which ones do we want to discourage? So the CCA program is directing money to the pre-existing hydro facilities across the state and some wind facilities. Over time, we hope that will begin to show a larger diversity of renewable sources, but that's what's available today. And so our CCA price will be matched by that purchasing of what are called renewable energy certificates. Okay, they're kind of certificates of authenticity, if you will. Now, your community solar, this is probably a longer answer than you're looking for. Your community solar is actually playing by a different set of rules. So they're generating solar. The utility is directed to purchase that solar energy, and program participants are rewarded, if you will, by seeing savings in the form of credits on your utility bill for your participation. And those are shown in the miscellaneous section of your RG&E bill. And it says CDG value stack credits. Okay, so it's kind of like you purchase yourself a coupon through community solar. So hopefully that made sense to people. Happy to elaborate if there's more questions on that.
So here's another good question. Did you do projections for the average homeowner for the cost over the 24 months? And this sort of gets to the point, I think, that that you touched on earlier about the difficulty comparing a variable rate with a fixed rate.
Yeah, right. Thank you, Ben, for that question. Excellent question. And I mean, you, of course, could run an analysis of, well, what was the average price per kilowatt hour in the last 12 months, 24 months, 30 years, and how does that compare to this particular price? And depending on where you draw those lines, you'll get different answers, right? That, of course, tells us nothing about where the market is going. So we can make that comparison, but I can't tell you what RG&E's price will be next month or the month after that or the month after that. But we do know that the energy market has been recovering. It was at a very low point during the pandemic. Economy is returning, prices are actually normalizing. So, while during the pandemic, prices were in the low 4-cent range for RG&E's purchasing of fossil fuel energy, and this is in the 5.8-cent range. So for someone who uses, let's say, 700 kilowatts of energy a month, you probably talk about a difference of $5 to $10 between the lowest price for RG&E and this fixed price. I can't tell you that this is a guaranteed savings. I also can't tell you it's a guaranteed increase in cost, because I cannot predict where RG&E will be each month to month, going forward. Hope that makes some sense.
So here's another good question. What if not enough people sign up? Will the price increase? So there's some risk about the price in the market, and this question really has to do, I think, with that level of risk.
Yeah, right. Very knowledgeable. And so the energy companies, as I mentioned, when they go to bid, they know that people can choose to participate or not. They've looked at the data across the state, and they've given their very best price for what they think they can, offer based on their expectations. But they have guaranteed that price to the community, to the city of Rochester participants for the next 24 months. And it doesn't matter how many people choose to take advantage of that price, they've committed to that price for the next 24 months.
So here's another one. Can the grid go down like what happened in Texas?
I love this Texas question, and it's really thoughtful. So maybe first, let's just take a step back. Texas is totally different from New York State. There are lots of reasons for that. But in terms of energy markets, Texas is virtually an island to itself. Texas does not have the capacity to either import or export their energy to other parts of the grid. They didn't want to participate in some aspects of the market. Texas is virtually unregulated, and those things are completely different in New York State. We have the ability to import and export energy, and we do, from Canada, from other states, and we are a highly regulated energy system and market. Okay, so why that matters is because in Texas, they supplied very cheap energy for people, but they did not spend any money investing in their infrastructure to protect themselves from weather extremes. So when they got that very cold snap as a result of climate chaos or climate change, if you will, they had equipment and pipes freezing. They're very heavily dependent upon natural gas for generating their electricity. I believe it's in the 80-some% range. And so when everything froze up, they couldn't get the natural gas to the power plants to generate the electricity. Will that happen in New York? Probably not. Number one, we're used to the cold. We've planned for the cold. We're a highly regulated environment, and we're getting less cold as a result of climate change. So I'm quite confident that in New York State, we're not going to experience the same situation as Texas. And I hope that answered your question.
So here's an easy one, Sue, and it's good to get this word out. Where can I review this presentation again on YouTube?
Awesome. So our YouTube site, our being Rocktricity's YouTube channel, has all kinds of presentations. And yeah, so if you go to YouTube, search Rocktricity, you'll get our list, our playlist, if you will. And there will be this presentation, last night's presentations, the presentations we gave during the educational period. I think that was like November or December. There's even a Spanish version, and a couple of them are ASL interpreted. So hopefully people can find what they need there.
Yeah, although it's probably important to point out that this presentation won't be up there right away. That'll take us a little bit of time. So
right, that's true.
Not very long, a day or so.
Thanks for that. Yeah. Yep. And these are also on Facebook, on the Rochester Community Power Facebook page.
Good point, yes. Here's another one. I think you may have touched on this, but how was Joule chosen as the partner, the administrator?
Yeah, great question. So the city of Rochester, as I mentioned, has been going through quite a lengthy process with community choice aggregation. They began attending some meetings and learning about it in 2015. They held public hearings and passed an enabling law, maybe around 2017 or so, adopted the climate action plan, and don't hold me to that date, it's not fresh in my mind. And then they held a competitive process to select an administrator. And that competitive process required Joule and other respondents to submit materials. Those materials were reviewed, and the city of Rochester subsequently selected Joule as the CCA administrator. And I should also note that the city of Rochester does not pay Joule directly. The city of Rochester did not pay for those letters either. So Joule is compensated through the supply contract with Constellation Energy. and Constellation New Energy is the company that paid for all of those letters. So tax dollars were not used for those items.
Another good question. I was reading the Constellation Energy website customer comments, and many were negative regarding billing. And I wonder how this provider was chosen.
Okay, well, that's another great question. So when the city of Rochester finished all the legal and regulatory requirements that then prepared them to go to bid for the energy, Joule put together the bid. There were certain requirements. They have to meet regulatory requirements set by New York State. They had to then, meet the guidelines of the particular energy product. And those responses were received by Joule. The variety of prices, if you will, were presented to the city of Rochester, and the city selected the best price for the product that they wanted to have as the default for our community.
I think another important aspect to point out there, Sue, is that that Joule is really also an expert in this field, and they had a considerable measure of input on the contract. And I think some of the past negative feedback on Constellation Energy has to do with the fact that their sort of default contract for customers is not as favorable to customers as this contract because of Joule's input.
That's a great point, Ben. Thank you.
Here's one. If you sign up, are you locked into a 2-year contract? So this gets to the ability to opt out and back in if you'd like.
Right. Great question. And the answer is just no. So you can leave this program at any time. You can rejoin the program at any time. Just be aware, like, it's usually not advantageous to try to drop and join every month or so, because it does take a billing cycle or two to leave the program or to join the program. And that just has to do with the time it takes for the information to get processed between Constellation New Energy and RG&E. And it has to do with when you make that request compared to when your meter gets read. Okay, so you can leave at any time, no cost. You can join at any time, no cost. It does take 1 to 2 billing cycles to make that transition.
So here's a really good question that we've had before too. How does the purchasing of credits, and I believe they're talking about RECs here, actually result in more renewable energy sources over time? I ask because it doesn't sound like Constellation is installing new solar or wind farms for this program.
Yeah, well, it's an excellent question from someone who is very knowledgeable about how the energy market is kind of structured. So for those of us who are a little newer to thinking about this, so quick background, there's actually 3 energy markets in New York State. There's the wholesale electrons, the electricity market. There's something called the REC market, and that's those certificates of authenticity for renewable electricity. And then there's a capacity market, which I'm not even going to touch on right now. But so these REC market, right? So all of these electrons look alike. They're invisible, quite frankly, right? But they're all flowing in the grid. For a renewable generator, when that wind or solar or hydro facility, when they put those electrons in the grid, the state of New York is basically tracking what they are putting on. And these certificates are equal to that generation. And then those certificates are kept track of in the New York State's generation attribute tracking system. So if you're thinking about these as pieces of paper, which they probably really aren't pieces of paper, but if you think of them that way, these are like a tradable commodity. When you want to purchase renewable electricity, what you're really doing is you're going to bid for the wholesale price, best wholesale price, and the cost of those certificates that are verifying that you are purchasing renewable electricity. All right, so you put those two things together and you get your final price, which in this case is 5.8 cents per kilowatt hour. So now if that makes sense to the question of how do we know that purchasing RECs will lead to more renewables? And this is kind of just a standard economic answer of supply and demand, right? We live in a very competitive capitalist market. We have seen in many instances that when you increase the demand for a product, that the market then responds by producing more of that product. There's no reason that we shouldn't think the same will be true with renewable energy. And that's why New York State basically created a REC market to be able to have that influence on the development of renewable energy resources. So you have a demand for them. More developers of renewable energy will see that there is a demand for that product, and that'll incentivize them to construct more renewable facilities. And that doesn't mean Constellation New Energy, right? Constellation may just be a broker. They're not necessarily the owner of any of these generating facilities, but they're the entity that is acquiring those certificates. Hopefully that answers your question. And Ben, feel free to add if you think there's.
No, I think you did a great job there. What kinds of problems / issues have other community aggregations experienced, and what were the resolutions?
Yeah, that's a thoughtful question too. Let's see. There with any energy program, even without CCA, there's always some infrequent issues with billing. That's the main one we've seen in some of the other aggregations that we've been associated with, where there may have been a confusion over budget billing, or there may have been a confusion over the supply didn't get onto 1 month's bill and it showed up in a subsequent month's bill. That's really the main thing that we've seen happen. And I'm happy to report that Constellation New Energy is being very, very proactive. They have worked with Joule to plan ahead for budget billing customers. If you are currently a budget billing customer, you will have received an additional insert in your letter describing what is going to happen and how Constellation New Energy is creating a budget for your supply. And they created a dedicated hotline so that a Rochester budget billing customer can call, and folks receiving or answering that phone line will know that it's for this CCA program. So getting ahead on that issue, I think, will really be great for the city of Rochester.
Next, can you explain in more detail why heap recipients aren't eligible? It sounds like clean energy for some, but not all.
Right. Fair critique. And that's not a result of Joule or the city of Rochester or community choice aggregation. That's a result of the rules around heap, right? So heap being like a federal program, I believe, there are certain rules that prevent them from making use of any ESCO offer unless it guarantees a savings, right? And this program is not guaranteeing a savings. It's not guaranteeing an increase in cost either, but it cannot guarantee any savings. And therefore, heap customers are excluded per those other rules. Hope that makes sense. The city of Rochester, though, the staff, as they've been developing the community choice aggregation program, is very cognizant of this, and they really want to move forward with some programming on community solar that they could provide to, first and foremost, to the heap participants, so that they too can benefit from clean energy. We hope to see that developed, in the coming year.
So another one that we get frequently, what happens at the end of 24 months to the rate and to the program? How will you determine success of this program?
Yeah, those are good questions. So I don't know how the city of Rochester will determine success. Hopefully a combination of things like participation and the amount of greenhouse gas reduction that can account for. And before the 24 months expires, the city will have to decide, do they want to renew a community choice aggregation program? And we hope so. And if so, there would be a new bid, right? The market can be totally different in 2 years. We're hoping the market will have even more favorable pricing for renewable energy, because we're hoping more developers, more renewable energy, more RECs will be available. So in 2 years or slightly less than that, we'll go to bid. If they choose a product that they think, again, is advantageous to move forward with, we'd have the same rollout repeated, where you'll receive a letter in the mail. It'll detail the new program offering. We'll have presentations, and around we go.
So another question that sort of follows on that, if the supplier changes at the 2-year mark, what do customers have to do? Do they have to unenroll and re-enroll? So you might explain a little bit about how that will work at the renewal stage.
Yeah, that is an excellent question. And actually, the town of Geneva is just now finishing that process. So while everyone who's eligible would receive the new letter with the new program offerings, you still wouldn't have to do anything to participate in the new CCA program. It still would be an opt-out situation. So you would basically expect to see a letter from RG&E saying, oh, Constellation New Energy, perhaps. Let's say you get a new supplier. Constellation New Energy is no longer your supplier. Then a new letter saying, oh, company ABC is your new supplier. And therefore you would know, oh, okay, everything worked, and I'm now enrolled in the new CCA program. But otherwise, yeah, customers will just have the same opportunity to opt out.
So there's a kind of a set of questions here too about following on about after the 2-year contract, about the outreach, and a question about whether there'll be a surge in outreach, an attempt to increase enrollment, and a note that the outreach might be designed better by then. And so maybe some dissatisfaction with outreach thus far. And I guess I'd just say, we've really tried to do our very best on the outreach, including this meeting and the letters. And we're certainly open to suggestions if you get in touch with us either through email or by calling our number.
Yeah, great. Thanks for raising that point, Ben. And certainly the outreach can always improve. We're always happy to look for ways to do better, to partner with more entities. I will say that our team did do a lot of outreach prior to the development of CCA. In particular with neighborhood associations. Some of those groups had us in to do a presentation to explain what CCA is and how it could be a helpful tool. Most folks are really interested once there is actually a price and some details. Okay, most people are like, yeah, it's a nice idea, but tell me more when it's actually a go. That being said, we also, once we knew the program was a go, sent materials to the neighborhood centers, sent things out to libraries. There's been materials, posted and in the news, and ads have been run. We would welcome and look for doing more of that. And and open, if you have more effective channels, happy to hear it. As far from our perspective, the letter has been the most effective way to reach people. And we know that because we've gotten considerable feedback. People are reaching out both with questions because they've received a letter and with questions because their neighbor got a letter and they didn't get a letter. So we're very pleased with that piece of it. Always happy to do more and to improve.
So there's one last remaining, this is actually just a comment, and it says, I, for one, am glad that Rochester is taking this effort to promote renewable energy use. Thank you and good luck. So I think we saw this sort of a comment at the end last night also. It's evident that many people really want to see renewable energy programs advance like this. So I think that's really encouraging.
Yeah, thank you. Whoever sent that comment in, thank you so very much. I know our team has, worked very hard to advance renewable energy programming, and we are excited to see the city of Rochester be a leader, as I said, statewide and in the country. It is really a privilege. So thank you to the city and to the city staff.
Sue, do you want to mention one last time about the role of RG&E in communicating the next steps?
Sure. Good idea. So you received a letter and that from us or from the Rochester Community Power, right, signed by the mayor. You then received a letter from RG&E and you had a robocall from RG&E. Okay, so that's what's happened so far. Come September, when actually it'll be August, right? So you're going to begin to be switched. The information is going to begin to be transferred from Constellation New Energy to RG&E. When RG&E gets that information, they're going to send you a letter that says, hey, Constellation New Energy is your new supplier. If you think there's been an error or if you have any questions, contact us, and they'll list our phone number at Rochester Community Power, the 244-0244 phone number, and you can give us a call. Happy to review any questions you have at that time. You'll then get another robocall from RG&E, and I'm not sure if it'll be like a couple days later or a week later. That's a little unclear, but you'll get another robocall telling you that you're being switched to Constellation New Energy, telling you to give us a call if you have questions or concerns. And then in September, you're at your meter read date, that's when the new supplier becomes effective. So you'll see that change in your October bill. Hope that helps. Is that anything else, Margie?
I just wonder if you might want to just touch on what portion of the total of people's total bill is gas versus electricity.
Yeah, okay, that's a great question. So of course, our gas use is highly dependent on the weather, right? So for most of us, gas is a source of heating. So in the winter, your gas bill is usually a fairly large percentage of your overall utility bill. This program has nothing to do with your gas bill. So you'll still see that fluctuation based on weather and based on the time of year. And I do want to note for you, because I've had this conversation with folks before, like I never changed my thermostat, right? My thermostat set at whatever, 70 or 69, whatever it happens to be at. If it's colder in February than it was in January, my house is losing more energy to the environment. And therefore, my house is using more energy, even though I haven't touched the thermostat, okay? So you will see that fluctuation in energy demand based on the weather conditions, even if you're not doing anything, okay? In terms of your electricity consumption and your electric bill, the delivery part of your bill, the money that goes to RG&E, is usually about 2/3 of the cost of your electricity. So you got 2/3 for delivery, you've got 1/3 for supply. This program is only impacting that third, the actual cost of the electricity. Hope that helps.
There's also a comment here. I noticed that Rocktricity and the Climate Solutions Accelerator have the same office address. Are you working together, or is one a division of the other? What's the relationship there?
Yeah, great question. So the four partners at Rocktricity, Ben, Melissa, Margie, and I, actually started our outreach and community choice aggregation as volunteers for what was then the Rochester People's Climate Coalition. The coalition has subsequently become a not-for-profit called the Climate Solutions Accelerator. And before they rebranded, we launched off and formed Rocktricity. And that was very much encouraged and supported that change. by the People's Climate Coalition. They're happy for us to form into a small business. It just makes us a little more nimble. The energy market changes pretty quickly. And so being a small business was a little easier than being a part of the not-for-profit directly. Very mutually agreed upon. And yeah, and we do share some office space. We are not, we are separate entities, but we do like to, converse with each other, maybe share some space at tabling events, things of that nature. So we're collaborative.
Another question here is, to what degree does RG&E use and promote the use of renewable energy outside of this effort by the city?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And all I can really point to is what they have disclosed. So every year, either once or twice a year, you'll get an environmental disclosure statement with your utility bill. And it'll tell you where they purchased electricity from. And in the most recent disclosure, it was 54% natural gas and dual fuel, which is natural gas usually linked with some diesel generators. And then there's nuclear power and hydropower. And I believe the hydropower was, maybe Shannon remembers, was 20% or less. So it is in the mix, RG&E's standard mix, but 54% was supporting fossil fuel generation.
And there's been a request to have you restate our phone number if people want to give us a call.
Yeah, great. So our phone number, obviously 585, but 244-0244. And maybe I can go back to that page that has our contact info. And you can also email us at info@rochestercommunitypower.com. I thought we used to have a slide with our contact information. We should put that in there. So maybe it's here. No, sorry about that. Yep. Other questions?
No other questions right now.
Ah, there it is. I knew we had a slide with our contact information on it. So let me leave that up. It's after the thanks. I think the thanks should probably come last, but all right. So info@Rochester Community Power or 244-0244 to speak to folks right here in Rochester with you. Anything else?
Nothing else here.
Okay, well, I hope everybody has a great day. Thank you so much for tuning in. Please do, share with your neighbors about the presentation, and have a great day.